Riftbound's newest expansion, Vendetta, introduces with it 3 major new mechanics. If you want to learn all the rules, interactions about them, strategic considerations on how to use them, and get a bird's eye view of how they're split across colors, this is the video for you. I'm Simon from Games Deconstructed, and let's get started! The first brand new mechanic introduced in Vendetta is Flow. Flow is a passive ability keyword that appears on certain spells in the set. It allows you to play them from your trash exactly once for the specified flow cost that's part of the ability. After you play it using Flow, it gets banished. So if a Twilight Step finds its way into your graveyard through being played earlier but also discarded, played and then countered, or any other method you can imagine, you can play it from that moment on for 4 and a purple, and then banish it. A couple important rules considerations here. First, Flow inherits the play speed the spell would normally have, meaning you can only play it when you could normally play that spell. It natively only appears on slow spells, so we will only play spells with Flow on your turn when the chain is empty and you're not in a showdown. And I had a lovely mnemonic prepared for this. Flow is slow. However, there is unfortunately an exception to that rule. Cannon Storm of Shuriken can give an existing spell in your trash Flow. And if that spell happens to have the action or reaction keyword, you will be able to play it using Flow at the speed that those keywords normally allow. Playing a spell with Flow counts as playing a spell and playing a card for the purposes of effects like Legion, Raven's Bloom Student, or Abandoned Hall. They can be countered, much like any other spell and any other manner of playing a spell, and they will get banished even if they are countered due to the Flow mechanic's delayed replacement effect. If you happen to play a Flow spell from your graveyard without using its Flow mechanic, perhaps with the help of a Fizz, it doesn't get banished. In the case of Fizz, it gets recycled normally. And finally, you can play a Flow card both the normal way from your hand and using Flow on the same turn. It doesn't need to marinate in your graveyard, you don't need to wait, it's not like hidden cards in that respect. Now that we know how the mechanic works, let's try to see what it wants to accomplish. Flow is what we might refer to in card game design as virtual card advantage. A card like Twilight Shroud is an excellent effect for its cost of 1 energy. The problem with it is that it wastes your draw for the turn. It's still quite a minor effect, even if it is appropriately costed. If you're on 10 runes and in top deck mode, you would much rather draw something more impactful. That's the relationship between high energy efficiency and card advantage. Flow cards behave kind of like you drew 2 copies of them at the same time, with the second copy occasionally being costed a bit differently. This makes them useful in the longer term, especially for decks that struggle with card draw more so than energy efficiency. Another factor they bring into play is resource flexibility. Let's compare the newly printed Dredge Up with the all-faithful Consult the Past. Both allow you to draw 2 cards for 4 energy. Consult has the added benefit of having the hidden and reaction keywords, it's playable for cheaper if you're able to hide it, or it allows you to hold up it plus a piece of interaction and play it in response to what your opponent does. These are non-trivial features, very positive features of the card. What Dredge Up has going for it is that you can play it in 2 mana draw 1 chunks across multiple turns potentially. Having 2 free mana on your turn is much more likely than 4, so it may be easier to squeeze in while still developing your board. Being able to delay that second draw has the small added benefit of giving you the opportunity to shape what's on top of your deck with mechanics like Predict and Vision, or just wait until you've seen more of it and have a better chance of calculating what cards are left and what cards in specific you're looking for in the first place. It's kind of the same concept behind waiting as long as possible before using your stacked decks. They also become ever so slightly more powerful with time. Beyond that, cards with flow synergize nicely with being discarded or put into trash from your deck, since you still get half of the card, so to speak, if they land in the trash without touching your hand. When playing Vendetta, it's going to be very worthwhile to keep an eye on what's in your opponent's trash. What's in it and whether what's in it are cards with flow is public information. You can ask your opponent to see that trash, or you can ask them what cards are in it pretty much at your leisure. Make use of that opportunity. There's 16 cards in the set that have or give flow. 4 of them are in red, 2 real ones in brittle steel and perfect execution, and especially that last one is notable, as being able to ready 2 units and give them each +3 on the attack is an explosive game closer. The other 2 are Akali and Zed signatures, so whether you should expect to see them will be telegraphed by the legend you're facing. Twilight Shroud is the only real one in green, accompanied by the aforementioned Akali and Shen's signature as well. Blue has Dredge Up, which we've already discussed, and Iterative Design, which creates mech tokens. Orange has Ambessa's signature, Public Execution, which is significantly more expensive to replay, but quite strong in the deck. And Onslaught, which is Primal Strength adjacent, but bear in mind that it lacks the action keyword, so it's significantly weaker defensively. Purple has Kenan's Storm of Shuriken give flow to a spell of your choice when he conquers, and a color-matched Kenan signature in Lightning Rush. A flow replayable stacked deck if you squint at it the right way. There's also Twilight Step, Up from the Deep, and for related cards, Stargazer, who gives a discount of 2 energy to spells with flow played from the trash. Yellow is 3 of the already discussed signatures, a removal spell in Lacerate, and a pretty flexible offensive buff or debuff in Dragon form. Synergizing with flow somewhat is the second mechanic on our list, Burn. Burn refers to the act of moving the top cards of your main deck directly into your trash. You might know it from other card games as Mill. It's formatted as Burn X, where the X is the number of cards an effect instructs you to place directly to the trash. Burn is not discard, nor is it killing anything or playing any of the cards you burn. So no on-discard synergies, no death knells or anything else activates when you burn those cards. It's also not movement, even though the rules refer to it as moving cards. It's a lowercase moving, so to speak. A burnt Stellacorn is not going to draw me cards, unfortunately. Interestingly, if you were to burn beyond the number of cards left in your deck, you burn out, netting your opponent a point and recycling your graveyard to form a new main deck. This is specified in one of the funnier sentences in the core rules. If instructed to burn more cards than they have in their main deck, they burn that many cards, burn out, and then burn the rest. Lots of burning going on. On the strategic side, Burn is a builder mechanic for a variety of spenders. It accelerates the pace at which you're able to put cards in your graveyard, which would normally require you to, play them, perhaps have them die in combat if they're units, but with Burn, that is not a problem. That's why it's a natural synergy for any sort of graveyard-centric mechanic. Cards that care about the size of your graveyard, like Rasa. Reanimator strategies making use of effects like Last Rites and the Harrowing to pull burnt creatures from the trash onto the battlefield. And decks running flow cards or alternative ways to play spells from the graveyard like Fizz. All of the above kind of describe different builds of Kenan, though he doesn't run a lot of cards that specifically say Burn in their text box. It's mostly Shadow Order Disciple, if anything, but Minefield and Lightning Rush are Burn by any other name really. The face of Burn in this set is likely going to be Zed, who cares about cards in his graveyard to boost his Shadow Clone tokens, which in turn empower his legend. His signature burns 3, and I've seen lists that go Miracle adjacent with Endless Riches, which burns 7. Discard, especially discard draw, is kind of a sister mechanic to burn. If you're enjoying one in your deck currently, you might want to add the other. And that's due to both of them being effective in building towards those graveyard-based payoffs. There's only 8 burn cards printed in the set. One of them can be played anywhere, it's the Battlefield Shadow Temple that burns 3 on hold, and the rest are split across red and purple, Zed's colors. Zed's signature is of course going to appear in both, Shadow Order Disciple, Karox, Cannon Storm of Shuriken, and Forgotten Relic in purple, Endless Riches, and Blade Twirler in red. And from older sets, I'd say Minefield should be an honorary member of the group. Remains to be seen if they retroactively keyword it in some sort of FAQ, perhaps in preparation for future synergies that care about the burn keyword specifically, but for now it just puts those cards into your trash. The final mechanic we've received access to in this set is Empower. It's divided into Empower, the process of doing the thing, and Empowered, the reward for doing so. Its most popular formatting looks like this. You have a card with an ability called Empower with an associated cost. You can activate that ability, placing it on the chain, which would normally happen at slow speed, so on your turn, not in a showdown and when the chain is empty, though the rules do account for scenarios where it might happen at a different speed. When it resolves, you will put an empowered token underneath the card, or a Funyun on the card I guess, and it will be empowered from then on. If it has a benefit preceded by the empowered keyword on it, that benefit is now active. The empowered status will remain on the card until it leaves the board. It dies, gets bounced to hand, banished and replayed, or whatever else. Alternatively, there's effects that disempower cards as part of their effect. These can be pointed at empowered cards to remove their empowered status. Bear in mind that after they've been disempowered, these cards will be able to empower themselves again for the same cost using their Empower ability. Empower, empower, empower. Time for some fiddly rules bits. You can empower something on the turn it came into play, unless the cost to empower it would be to exhaust it and it came into play exhausted. You can't empower something that's already empowered, with the exception of Kale. This applies to both cards that empower themselves, where that's reflected in the keyword's reminder text, and cards that empower something else. They can't empower an Ambessa twice, for example. In that same vein, you can't disempower something that's not empowered. Interestingly, you can use cards that empower something else, like Hextech Formula, to empower something that doesn't have the empower keyword or the empowered keyword. The empowered card will probably not care, it doesn't get any benefit out of this, but you might get an extra activation of Mel's Legend from it, or a target for Profiteer in some extremely niche Jace deck. From a strategic perspective, Empower is a value mechanic, allowing you to invest extra resources into an already developed unit to make it have an even bigger impact on the game state. It also serves as kind of an engine building component for certain gear strategies, predominantly centered around Jace's colors, where some of them enter play exhausted, some of them need to exhaust themselves to empower, and then exhaust themselves and disempower to actually get an effect. You can speed up that process using cards like Hextech Formula, which allow you to empower other gear, or by readying them, allowing them to use the empower and disempower parts of their effect on the same turn. On the unit side, Empower is going to be a good look in matchups where you want to go over your opponent in a might trade. Most Empower effects bring with them additional might, so they are going to help in those situations. They are countered, however, by bounce effects and hard removal. Since you lose empowered status if a unit leaves the board, something like a Star-Crossed or a Wind and Ghosts become very cost-effective when you bounce an empowered 4-drop that the opponent also poured an additional 3 energy 1 power into. Same if you kill it with something like Hidden Blade, it's a positive energy trade for you most of the time. Of course, since the Empower mechanic is voluntary, the owner of these cards will not have to pay those additional costs if they are expecting a Star-Crossed. They might very well develop another smaller unit if they have that opportunity, so it's not a hard counter per se. Legends that care about empowering stuff are Ambessa and Mel, and there's also Jace who cares about being empowered himself and can run all those engine-building gears that want to empower, untap and tap themselves. You might also see singular empower cards played in other decks. Mournful Witness is insane for a 2-drop in Akali, for example, who also has an empower effect herself. In terms of cards, Red has the Akali and Zed Legends, Akali a more traditional pay-to-empower version, while Zed empowers as a trigger when you banish a card, and disempowers to use his discard draw ability. Then there's units in Punching Poro, Shadow Fiend, Akali Deadly Weapon, and Bakai Sandspinner, plus a gear in Rage Amplifier. In green we have early game units in Steel Paws and Mournful Witness, then Frostcoat Mother, Serene Ascetic, culminating in the massive investment that is Green Nasus. On the gear side there's Helm of Suppression, which taxes your opponent's plays and even more so when empowered. Blue has Jace and Mel Legends. Again, the first empowers permanently for a cost, while the second empowers where something else is empowered, and can disempower to activate an ability. For units, there's Applied Researchers, Grumpy Rogbur, Apprentice Mage, Covert Informant, and Blue Mel. For gear, Questionable Tome. Orange adds Ambessa Legend, who much like her daughter empowers when she sees something else empower and can disempower to use her ability, and the biggest selection of units out of all the colors. There's Legion Marauder, Brutal Hunter, Bakai Witherclaw, Orange Ambessa, Dame the Despoiler, Renekton Brute, and Gangplank. To accompany Jace's strategy, there's gear in Plateworm Egg, Hextech Disc, and Tools of Empire. In purple, Cannon's Legend empowers when you play a card from somewhere other than your hand, and disempowers to give a unit Assault 2. He's accompanied by Kinku Liveblade, Tail-Cloaked Matriarch, Purple Mel, and Karox. And to wrap it up, in yellow we have the meme gear Glowstone, Noxian Emissary and Escaped Greybuck, Solari Sunhawk, Kale, Yellow Ambessa, and the sworn enemy of Orok specific, Orok General. Finally, it's worth keeping in mind cards that can empower or disempower other stuff. Sanction in green can empower or disempower a unit until end of turn for 3 and a green. In the same color, Tomb Raider Barbara disempowers an empowered gear or kills one that's not empowered. In blue, Hextech Formula, which was already mentioned, can empower other gear, and Shock Blast cares about you controlling something that's empowered. In orange, Guttural Roar gives more might to empowered units, and Profiteer can disempower one card to empower another. Wild Claw allows you to fish for a unit from your main deck and then empower it once it's played. In purple, there's Tornado Warrior, who temporarily empowers something when played from hidden. This synergizes nicely with Matriarch, Purple Mel, and Karox, who have a one-time effect on becoming empowered, but don't benefit from having that status on them in the long term. Lacerate in yellow disempowers a unit before attempting to kill it if it's 3 might or less, and that's all of them. I hope to never have to say empowered again, which it might be a tough ask because Ambessa is shaping up to be my new main this set. Let me know in the comments what your favorite mechanic out of the 3 is and why. Thanks a lot for watching, I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed, and a special thank you to the Patreon supporters over on patreon.com/gamesdeconstructed, especially Jakub Burdun, Andrew Gross, and Michał Gawarkiewicz. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.